Hi again then guys, and welcome to another look back to the world of Gran Turismo 6 for a series for those who are new to the channel and perhaps unfamiliar with it, where I like to look at certain vehicles in Gran Turismo 6 in particular that I believe have a strong chance, sometimes a good chance, sometimes not so great, but still a chance of returning in the future of Gran Turismo, either in GT Sport or more likely at this point, some of them in GT7. As far as this car goes, it is of course the Ferrari California. It's one of a couple of Ferraris that we've already talked about in this same series. I believe I discussed the FXX before, and of course the 599, both of which I think have a good chance of coming back. This one I believe definitely has a lower chance than those two, but I would personally love to see this car return. The California is possibly my second or third favourite Ferrari, of course behind the FF in particular, and it's one of those cars which, funnily enough in a similar way to the FF, I've liked a lot more over time. Initially I did not like the look of it, especially from the back. I thought it looked kind of weird, but over time, as I said, I've liked it a lot more. And the funny thing about the California in the game is it's very, very similar to the Maserati Gran Turismo. Not just in terms of what kind of car it is, and even the visuals are fairly similar, but I mean more specifically than that, it's a car that so many people underestimate. The Maserati Gran Turismo, even in GT Sport with the N-Class system, is a deceptively good car. Likewise, the California is in GT6. Now this one that I'm driving is stock, and when it's stock, some of the specs don't actually sound all that impressive, especially as the years go by and, for instance, super sports cars and especially supercars get more and more power, less and less weight, and of course more extreme performance. And then you have this, a car which doesn't seem or sound as extreme on paper. It's got a 4.3 litre V8 engine, it's naturally aspirated, no surprises so far for a Ferrari, 453 horsepower, which is decent, but that's, for instance, less than an original R35 GTR, it's less than an Aston DB9, so even by a car's standards that came out later than something like those, it still doesn't necessarily sound as impressive. Now, we're not told what the torque figure is in the game. Being a Ferrari, I would probably assume somewhere around 300, maybe 350 pound-feet at the most, and the weight is pretty high. It's 1,630 kilos, which again, for a 2+2-seater convertible Tourer GT, is not a surprise at all. What is a surprise, however, is, as I alluded to earlier on, how good it is. This car is very good through corners, and funnily enough, very ironically in fact to me, this car has aged with GT6's physics far better than the 599 has, because for those of you who watched that review, I said that I didn't think the car felt that good anymore. Some of the Lambos suffer in a similar way. The Reventon, for instance, feels kind of weird through corners. This doesn't. This feels great, and that's one of the reasons why I think that this one, although nowhere near as popular and nowhere near as obvious, and certainly not as likely to come back, I believe it would be a really good addition, especially in GT Sport actually. It would be a fantastic rival to the Gran Turismo, a really good, say, N400 to N500 level machine, and of course with the performance points coming back in the next game, it would be interesting to see how that factors in as well, because one of the huge advantages when you have N classes and performance points working together is that it's less clear-cut. I've mentioned a number of times in the past how having just a power-based ranking system is inherently flawed, because you can have two cars with 400 horsepower, if one of them weighs 2 tons and one of them is a, Renault Clio, for example, then of course the lighter car is going to have certain advantages. With performance points in play as well, however, it factors not just the power, but also stuff like the weight will be taken into account, and that is such a good thing for stuff like the Gran Turismo and the California, because the power is not overly high, but also the weight is pretty high. So the N-Class is modest, the high weight means that the points wouldn't be too crazy, but at the same time, with that power and with that weight, it is a good car. So you can do more to it in terms of tuning suspension and brakes and dropping the weight without even touching the power that much, which can make a huge difference to its ability. And that is one of the reasons why those cars are so, I would say, deceptively good. It's smooth, it's controlled, and one of my favourite things about the California in this game as well is it does not feel as heavy as it is. it's actually pretty up there in terms of weight, even compared to something, for instance, like an SLR or a GTR, cars which you would think of as being heavy. The California is not far off those kind of weights. So for it to handle as well as it does, I think is a testament to how good it is, really. Now, the performance points of this car when stock are not crazy high, and of course that would probably be adjusted in future anyway. So the only potential drawback of a car like this, especially when you compare it to, for instance, something Japanese like a GTR, or American, like a Corvette or a Viper, is it's pretty expensive. This is a SuperSports car with a supercar price. In GT6 it's 236,000 credits. That's a lot. Even by Ferrari standards, that's a whole lot of cash. Compare that, for instance, to an F430, which most people would probably think of as being a superior performance car, and in many ways it is. It's a lot lighter, it's more powerful. That car is only 243,000. $7,000 ain't that much of a difference, and yet this is close enough to that price to be a competitor with another Ferrari. And of course that's a lot more than the Maserati is. So it's not a car that has no downsides or imperfections or potential things to put people off. The looks might not be for everyone, the performance might not be good enough for everyone, and the price might be too high for some people. But to me, the California is a car that deserves more respect. It definitely deserves more use, so if, for instance, you do go back at some point and play GT6 again, I would strongly urge you to buy a California and try it out. Don't even necessarily tune it, just give it a drive, see what you think of it, and then tune it up and see what it can do, because I can tell you now, it can do a lot. It's a deceptively good car, as I said, and one of my personal favourite Ferraris. I love the smoother, more long-distance vibe that it has, and I think one of the good things about that is it makes it more forgiving, in a similar way once again to the Maserati. But overall, that's it for my thoughts on the California. Of course, stick around on the channel for more GT6 content, and don't worry, when Gran Turismo 7 comes out, whenever that will be, it will not stop my previous Gran Turismo coverage of the older games. Everything from the first one all the way up to 7, and of course Sport as well, will continue to be featured from myself and the Patreon crew here on the channel. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.